Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's story. Tonight's journey will take us to the vast, endless deserts, where the sands shift with the whispers of ancient secrets. A lost city, forgotten by time, lies beneath the golden dunes. It has waited for centuries, hidden from the eyes of men, holding its stories, its treasures, and its mysteries. This story will guide you through the desert night, where the stars hang like lanterns in the sky, and the soft wind carries tales from a world long gone. As we travel, let the gentle rhythm of this tale calm your mind and guide you into a peaceful, restful sleep. The sands of time move slowly here, and so will your thoughts, until you find yourself drifting into quiet slumber. If you're feeling stressed, restless, or just need a moment to unwind before bed, you've come to the right place. This is the perfect time to relax, breathe deeply, and let the story carry you. So sit back, let go of the day, and allow yourself to be wrapped in the calm of this tale. Before we begin, if you enjoy stories like this and want more peaceful journeys to guide you to sleep, please remember to like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you never miss a story from Sleepless Stories. Let's start this adventure together and let the night wrap you in its stillness. The desert stretched endlessly before him, a sea of shifting dunes that seemed to go on forever. Beneath the deep blue sky, where the stars would soon begin to twinkle, the world felt still. The heat of the sun had long since faded, leaving the coolness of night to sweep across the sand. The air here was different, thicker, quieter, almost as if the desert itself was holding its breath. Jacob had heard the legends of the lost city his entire life. Whispers told of a place buried beneath the sand, a city once glorious with golden spires and shining marble streets. It was said to have vanished into the desert thousands of years ago, swallowed whole by the shifting sands. The city's name was forgotten, its history a dream lost in the depths of time. But Jacob had always believed. He had felt the pull of those ancient stories deep in his heart. Something had drawn him here, across miles of desolate landscape, into the vastness of the desert. The wind seemed to whisper his name, urging him forward, ever deeper into the unknown. Now, standing at the edge of the dunes, Jacob could feel the weight of the past pressing on him. The desert was alive with its own rhythm, as if it were breathing alongside him. He had no map, no guide, only the stars and the soft voice of the wind to lead him. But in his heart, he knew the city was close. It had been waiting for him, hidden beneath the sand, for as long as the desert had existed. He stepped forward, his footsteps sinking softly into the cool sand. The night air was dry, but it felt comforting, like a blanket wrapped around his shoulders. He couldn't explain it, but he felt a sense of peace here. The quiet of the desert was like a balm for his weary mind. He had spent years searching for this city, following rumors and old maps, and now, finally, it seemed as if he was on the brink of finding it. As he walked, the sands shifted beneath his feet, almost as if they were alive, responding to his every step. The path ahead was unclear, but the wind seemed to guide him, swirling in patterns that led him forward. It was as if the desert itself was welcoming him. The air grew cooler as Jacob continued, the sky above darkening with the first hints of stars. The moon, nearly full, cast a pale light over the desert, illuminating the dunes in a soft silver glow. He stopped for a moment, lifting his eyes to the heavens. The stars were brighter here than anywhere he had ever been. They hung in the sky like diamonds scattered across velvet, each one a distant flame, burning through the night. He took a deep breath, inhaling the dry desert air, and began walking again. The silence of the desert was profound, broken only by the sound of his own footsteps and the occasional whisper of wind through the dunes. It was a silence that felt ancient, as though the desert had held its breath for centuries, waiting for someone to listen. As he moved, a soft light flickered in the distance, barely visible at first, like the glint of a hidden treasure. His heart quickened. He had seen it, the faintest shimmer of something below the surface, like a memory just out of reach. Jacob's pace quickened, his excitement building. He had reached the place where the desert whispered to him. This was where the city would be. He could feel it in his bones. The city was close. Jacob followed the flickering light, his footsteps quick and sure. As he drew closer, the air around him began to feel different, almost charged with energy. The wind swirled around him, as if trying to tell him something. He could hear it now, low murmurs, like voices from the past, the whispers of the desert, calling to him. He stopped suddenly, his eyes scanning the horizon. In the distance, he saw it clearly now, a structure, barely visible, rising out of the sand like a forgotten monument. It was not large, but it had an undeniable presence, as if it had been waiting for centuries to be discovered. Jacob took a deep breath and stepped forward. The sand beneath his feet shifted, and as if responding to his presence, the ground before him began to open. Slowly, steadily, the desert revealed its secrets. He stood at the entrance of what appeared to be an ancient stone doorway, the sand drifting away to reveal intricate carvings on the stone walls. The city was real. It had been hidden for so long, and now it was finally showing itself to him. The wind whispered louder now, urging him forward. With trembling hands, Jacob reached out and pushed open the door. It creaked as it moved, but the sound was not disturbing. Instead, it felt like a welcome. Inside, the air was cool and still, a stark contrast to the hot desert outside. The walls of the city were made of smooth stone, etched with symbols Jacob didn't recognize, but they felt familiar, as though he had seen them in a dream. He stepped further inside, and as his eyes adjusted to the dim light, he saw something that took his breath away. The city was alive with history. Though the buildings were worn, the craftsmanship was unmistakable. Delicate arches, columns rising toward the ceiling, and floors paved with colorful tiles that shimmered even in the low light. The air was filled with the scent of ancient dust, but it was not stale. It was alive with stories. Every corner seemed to hold a secret, every passageway a forgotten tale. Jacob felt a presence here, something ancient, something that had lived and breathed long before him. This was a city that had stood the test of time, hidden beneath the sands, waiting for someone to find it. And now it had found him. I hope you enjoyed the first part of Sleepless Stories, Lost City Beneath the Sands. If this story helped you relax and you're ready for the next part of our journey, make sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to stay updated. Don't miss out on the next part, where the secrets of a lost city are unveiled even further. Sweet dreams and restful sleep await. The stone hallway echoed faintly with Jacob's footsteps as he moved deeper into the lost city. Behind him, the desert winds whispered against the closed entrance like the soft hush of a forgotten lullaby. Ahead, only stillness awaited, but it wasn't empty. No, the silence felt dense, like the air carried old breath, waiting to exhale. The temperature had shifted the moment he stepped through the ancient threshold. The coolness wasn't just from shade, it was deeper than that, as though the stone itself remembered the absence of sun and held it close. Jacob slowed his pace. Each step felt deliberate now, as if the ground below him pulsed with some faint rhythm almost too subtle to notice. He paused and knelt down, placing a hand against the tiled floor. Yes, there it was, a soft vibration, a barely there hum, like the low thump of a distant drum. A heartbeat. It didn't scare him. Alive. He stood slowly, letting his fingers brush against the walls, which were carved with symbols and stories in a language he didn't know, but somehow felt familiar. Spirals, rising lines, shapes resembling trees and eyes and waves. Some shimmered faintly, as if dusted with silver or moonlight. This wasn't just architecture. It was memory, cast in stone. The city, though hidden for millennia, had not forgotten itself, and neither had it forgotten how to welcome. The hallway opened into a large chamber, wide and round, where the ceiling formed a soft dome. In the center stood a raised platform, a simple stone table with grooves carved into its edges. Above it, a shaft of pale blue light spilled in from a narrow slit in the ceiling, casting an ethereal glow. Jacob stepped into the circle of light. The heartbeat grew louder, not in sound, but in sensation. It radiated through his feet, into his bones, up his spine. He closed his eyes, and then he heard something. Not with his ears, but deep inside. You are not the first to walk these stones, but you are the first to listen. The voice wasn't a voice at all, more like a gentle thought, shaped by the city itself. Jacob opened his eyes, slow and steady, and the grooves on the platform began to glow. He approached the table, now illuminated by the soft pulse of the glowing carvings. The grooves shifted faintly, rearranging themselves not physically, but in the mind's eye. Symbols danced, merged, and faded. It was as if the table were speaking in a language made of movement and memory. Jacob watched, entranced. The images began to tell a story, a civilization that worshipped the moon and the desert wind. A city built not just on stone, but on silence, stillness, and listening. People who believed the earth had a soul, and that their duty was not to shape it, but to hear it. And then, the sands came, not in anger, but as part of a cycle. The people did not fight. They did not flee. They slept, entrusting the desert to keep them safe, entrusting someone would someday come and listen again. Jacob let out a long breath, unaware he had been holding it. As the carvings faded back into quiet, the room shifted slightly, not in space, but in feeling. The air grew warmer, more familiar. He turned and noticed another passageway had opened in the far wall, revealed by a sliding stone panel now perfectly aligned with the corridor behind. The city responded to presence, to attention, to intention. He stepped through. The corridor was narrow, the walls etched with fine lines that felt like music frozen in form. As he passed, the vibrations of the city seemed to hum around him, not a melody, but a sensation of welcome. At the end of the passage, he entered a small circular chamber. There were cushions on the floor, dusty, but intact. A basin in the center, filled with water, so still it could have been a mirror. Above it, hanging on a fine wire from the ceiling, was a crystal orb, pale and faintly glowing. The moment Jacob stepped inside, the heartbeat pulsed once, the orb shimmered, and he felt seen. He knelt beside the basin and looked into the water. His reflection stared back at him, calm, soft-eyed, and covered in a thin veil of sand. But as he watched, his face began to change, not into someone else, but into many selves. The child who first heard the desert story, the teenager who studied dusty books by candlelight, the wanderer with cracked boots and hopeful eyes, and the man now, surrounded by stillness, seen for all that he had carried. The crystal above him glowed gently, and for a moment he felt like he was floating, like time paused, and memory poured gently into him, like tea into a quiet cup. "You have walked far," the city whispered again, "but the furthest journey is always inward." When he stood again, the room felt different, softer, warmer, not physically but in tone, in memory. He realized something then. This wasn't a ruin. This wasn't a city broken by time. It had chosen to disappear, to fold itself into silence, to wait not for explorers, but for listeners, for dreamers. And now, Jacob was no longer a guest here. He was part of its rhythm, part of its remembering. Jacob stood motionless, surrounded by the soft hum of the city. He had felt the pulse of the walls, the steady beat beneath his feet, and yet there was a quiet unease. The city was more than just stone and memory. It was a living thing, waiting for him to discover its depths. The stillness pressed on, but not in a way that felt unsettling. It was gentle, comforting, like an old friend sitting beside you, not needing to say a word to make you feel at home. He felt the pull against something else, hidden deeper within the city, calling to him. The whispers of an ancient garden, buried not just beneath the earth, but also beneath layers of time. As he moved forward, the cool air of the corridor gave way to something fresher, softer. He walked slowly, unsure of where exactly he was headed, but trusting that the city would guide him. And then he saw it. The walls before him had transformed. No longer cold stone, they were lined with thick, dark vines, winding their way across the surface like veins of life. Jacob stepped closer, his hand brushing lightly against the surface. He felt the subtle warmth of their life, pulsing gently beneath the earth, waiting for recognition. The garden was not a place he had expected. It didn't feel like an indoor space, nor did it feel like it belonged to the world he knew. It was something else, something ancient, where the laws of time had bent, where the present met the past in silent harmony. A gentle breeze stirred, though there was no opening to the outside world. The air smelled fresh, with the faintest hint of wildflowers, moss, and earth. The faintest hum of life vibrated through the ground beneath Jacob's feet, and the scent of something warm, something alive, wrapped around him. He stepped forward. The walls, now overrun with vines and thick vegetation, parted like curtains drawn open, revealing the heart of the hidden garden. It was no ordinary garden. The ground was soft, lush, and spongy beneath his boots, though no soil was visible. Flowers and plants of every shape and color flourished in the half-light. They grew in patterns that made no sense, twisting around each other in spirals, radiating out in perfect symmetry. A strange moonlight filled the space, casting everything in an ethereal glow. No windows, no lamps, just the glow of soft radiance, like the light of a distant, hidden star. Jacob marveled at the contrast. The city, with all its stone and age, had crumbled into the sand, but here in this garden, life had thrived in silence, untouched by the passing of time. The air here was different, too cool, but not cold. It felt like breathing in an ancient dream, where nothing needed to be explained. The hum he had felt earlier pulsed through the space in waves, as if every living thing within the garden was part of a greater symphony. In the center of the garden, just beyond a cluster of bright, purple flowers that hung gently, stood a tree, unlike anything Jacob had ever seen before. Its bark was silver and smooth, glowing faintly under the moonlight. The branches spread out wide, casting deep shadows that seemed to shift with the breeze, and from the tips of its branches hung delicate, translucent fruits, shimmering like pearls. Jacob felt drawn to the tree. His steps were slow, measured. The closer he got, the more he could hear a soft, melodic sound, like a song carried by the wind, but without words. It felt as though the tree itself was singing, its branches swaying in time with the melody. The song was familiar in some way, though Jacob couldn't remember ever hearing it before. He reached out, his fingers grazing the tree's silver bark. As soon as he touched it, a soft vibration thrummed beneath his skin. His breath caught in his throat. The world around him seemed to pause. The humming in the air grew louder, filling his ears with the music of the garden. Suddenly, a vision unfurled before him, vivid and clear. He saw the people of this city, long ago walking beneath the tree, their faces peaceful, their eyes serene. They gathered here to share in the songs of the land, to listen to the whispers of the earth, to remember the connection between life and the stars above. They had come here for answers, for guidance, for peace. The tree, it seemed, had been their anchor, and now it was his. A single translucent fruit drifted slowly from the tree, falling into Jacob's hands as if guided by the wind. The fruit was soft, delicate, and glowing faintly, as though holding the essence of the night itself. It was light in his palm, weightless, but there was an undeniable sense of something ancient, something powerful imbued within it. Jacob turned it over in his hands, studying it. It seemed to pulse with a heartbeat of its own, as though it had been waiting for this very moment, waiting for him to reach out and claim it. A voice, not spoken, but felt in his chest, vibrated softly. "This is the fruit of knowing, Jacob. It will show you what you need to see, but it will also ask you to leave something behind. The city has waited for you, as you have waited for it. What will you offer in return?" Jacob held the fruit tighter, feeling the weight of the question. It wasn't a question of words, but of presence, of choice. The city had waited for him, and now it asked him to decide what part of himself he was willing to leave behind in order to move forward. As Jacob stood there, the gentle hum of the garden grew stronger, as though the entire place was alive, responding to his decision. The fruit in his hand seemed to glow brighter, and the city, deep beneath the sand, seemed to sigh in unison. The wind in the trees stopped. The air held its breath. The heartbeat of the city of the land pulsed through him, and he knew that what he chose here would ripple outward into the future. The garden would continue. The city would remain tucked away beneath the sands, but it would not be the same. Everything had changed, and so had he. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the lost city beneath the sands. If you found peace and relaxation in this tale, please remember to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon for more calming bedtime stories. Don't miss the next part of this adventure, where the mysteries of the city are revealed even deeper. Until then, rest easy and sleep well. Of course, here's the next soothing chapter in your bedtime story. The garden held Jacob gently, like a soft dream that didn't want to end. But the glow of the fruit in his hand began to fade, pulsing more slowly now, as if urging him onward. The time had come to leave this sanctuary and follow the next part of his journey. He turned back the way he had come, retracing his steps through the living tunnel of vines. The walls whispered as he passed, not in words but in rustling leaves, in soft sighs of petals and stems brushing one another. The sound was calming like the faint rustle of bedsheets in the quiet of night. As he passed through the arched entrance, the warm air of the garden gave way once more to the cool stillness of the city's stone corridors. But now he moved differently. Not as a stranger walking through ancient ruins, but as someone welcomed. The city no longer felt unfamiliar. It was beginning to feel like home. And in his palm, the fruit now cool and dim felt like a key. He sensed, without knowing how, that the city would open its next secret soon. The corridor turned, sloped gently downward, and began to spiral slowly, steadily, deeper into the earth. The stone underfoot remained smooth and clean, untouched by time, and the walls glowed faintly with soft silver veins that pulsed with each step Jacob took. Down, down the path wound, not steeply, but persistently. He felt no fear. The air here was quiet, slightly humid, as though the stone itself was holding breath. At last, the spiral ended at a doorway, not grand, not imposing, just ... waiting. The door was carved with a symbol. A simple eye surrounded by curved lines, almost like a sunrise. Jacob reached forward without hesitation and laid his palm against the center. The fruit in his other hand flared briefly one last breath of light, then vanished into vapor, dissolving softly into the air. The stone door responded at once, sliding open with a low hum, as though it too had been waiting for centuries for this exact moment. Beyond the door lay a chamber vast and still. The temple. The space was massive, round, and open like the heart of a shell. Pillars rose around its perimeter, their tops lost in the dim light above. The ceiling was impossibly high, fading into a dome that shimmered faintly with golden reflections, like candlelight dancing on water. But it was the center of the room that drew Jacob's eye. There, resting on a circular pedestal, was a structure of crystal and stone. It resembled an hourglass, yet no sand passed through it. Instead, soft orbs of golden light drifted slowly inside, floating upward and downward in perfect balance, like thoughts suspended in meditation. Jacob approached. Each step he took echoed lightly, not loudly, as if the stone respected the quiet. He stood before the hourglass and watched the lights drift, weightless. They pulsed in harmony with the rhythm he had felt beneath the city, the heartbeat. And then, from deep within the temple, a voice. All things return, not frightening, not even surprising. It was a voice without age. It might have been a woman, or a man, or something else altogether. It came from within the walls, or perhaps from within himself. Asterisk. When the wind forgets a name, the sand remembers it. When a footstep fades, the stone keeps its echo. And when the stars blink closed, the silence holds their warmth. Asterisk. Jacob listened, still and soft. Asterisk. This city did not vanish. It folded into silence, into time, into waiting. You are the one who listens, so now we will remember. Asterisk. The hourglass brightened, and around the chamber the walls began to change. Images formed, not drawn or etched, but alive, like dreams projected into the stone. Jacob saw the city as it once was, alive with people, light, music, peace. There were no battles, no kings, no thrones, just harmony, listening, reflection. The people of the city gathered in circles beneath the stars, whispering their stories into small ceramic vessels, which they buried in the sand, not to hide them, but to offer them to time. They had not feared disappearance. They had welcomed it. Not death, not loss, but rest. And now, as Jacob stood within the heart of their world, they began to stir again. Not as spirits, not as ghosts, but as memory. They spoke through the walls, through the light, through the stone beneath his feet. Jacob stood silently, absorbing it all. There were no instructions, no commands, just knowing. About remembering what should not be forgotten. The temple wasn't a monument. It was a sanctuary of memory, a soft resting place where nothing ever truly vanished, where everything, every thought, every feeling, every breath could be held gently forever. At the base of the hourglass, a panel slid open. Inside, a shallow bowl. Jacob somehow knew what to do. He reached into his satchel and withdrew the only thing he had brought with him from his childhood, a folded piece of worn cloth. It was a handkerchief. His mother had embroidered with the name Jacob in her soft looping thread. It had traveled with him everywhere. And now he let it go. He placed it into the bowl. The light within the hourglass flared one final time. Not bright, not blinding, just enough to warm the room, like a sun rising somewhere behind his thoughts. The bowl closed gently. A soft chime echoed. And then quiet again. Temple held its silence, but Jacob felt something had changed. The heartbeat of the city had slowed, as though the land itself had exhaled. He stood there, hand over heart, eyes soft, breath slow. He didn't need answers. He didn't need more. He simply understood. This wasn't the end of a journey. It was the beginning of a longer dream. Jacob lingered a while in the temple, his breathing slow, his heart calm. The echo of the city's pulse still vibrated faintly through the stone beneath his boots, but it was quieter now, like a lullaby drawing to a close. The golden lights within the hourglass drifted slowly in silence, no longer guiding, no longer requesting. He turned from the pedestal, letting the stillness wrap around him like a blanket. The air didn't feel cold, it felt sacred. Every surface of this place held memory, and now part of his memory was here too. As he walked back through the curved passage that had led him into the temple's heart, he felt something had shifted inside him. Not changed, just softened, grounded, as though a knot deep within his chest had finally unraveled, and in its place only silence remained. A good silence, the kind that speaks louder than words. When Jacob emerged from the spiral passageway, the city's halls were different, not in shape, but in feeling. The once dim corridors were now lit with a soft inner glow, as if the stone itself had awakened. There was no need for torches or stars. The city was alight with remembering. The path was no longer uncertain. He walked instinctively, turning down corridors that seemed to know he was coming, passing through archways that opened at his approach. Eventually, the passage led to a door, unlike the others, smaller, plainer, wooden, not stone, painted in pale blue, worn smooth with time. A small handle waited at its center. Jacob reached out and turned it. The door creaked open softly, revealing a single room. The room was small and warm, glowing with amber light. A simple wooden table rested in the center with 2 chairs. A clay teapot sat quietly on the table's surface, steam curling up from its spout. The scent of honey and herbs filled the air, soothing and familiar, The room felt impossibly out of place in the grandness of the ancient city. But Jacob smiled, because somehow it felt like home. On the wall was a shelf filled with worn books. A woven rug covered the floor. A candle flickered gently near a stack of parchment, where someone long ago must have written their thoughts beneath the same light. Jacob stepped in and sat down. The chair creaked softly under his weight. The teapot seemed to notice, as if waiting for this moment, and with the smallest motion, it poured itself into a single ceramic cup. He lifted the cup, took a sip. Warm, sweet, comforting Dot, and in that moment, he understood the secret of the last room. This was not where the city ended. This was where it rested. And now, so could he. The books on the shelves, Jacob noticed, bore no titles, just symbols. Spirals, stars, lines resembling footprints. They weren't written in any known language, but as his fingers brushed their spines, he could feel their stories. Not to be read, Dot, to be remembered. Each one held a life, a dream, a moment. Not grand history, but quiet memory. The kind of stories people tell only to the wind. Things not recorded in books or shouted in halls. The soft truths whispered just before sleep. The ones we often forget to say aloud. The city had kept them all, like pressed flowers between pages, Dot, still fragrant. Still bright, Dot, and now Jacob's story would join them. Not because he sought glory, but because he had listened. He sat back in the chair, finished the tea, and closed his eyes. Around him, the room hummed softly. The walls exhaled warmth. The candle flickered, casting long shadows that danced gently across the ceiling. And then softly he heard it, the final whisper of the city. You came in search of what was lost, but nothing was ever truly gone. Greater than asterisk, the sand covers. The silence cradles. Greater than memory always breathes beneath. Greater than you have heard us. And now we hear you. Asterisk Jacob rose from the chair, his body light, his heart full. The door behind him had closed, but another had appeared open to the desert. Night, Dot, he stepped through. The sands had not changed. The stars still shimmered overhead. But everything was different, because he was no longer a man searching for a forgotten city. He was a man who had found a place that remembered how to sleep. And as he walked into the moonlit dunes, he carried with him no treasure, no map, no proof. Stillness, Dot, only peace, Dot, and in the distance, far behind, the city whispered its final promise to the desert sky. Greater than we are not lost. We are resting.